Good morning. Hopefully you can hear us, you can see us, you've got your coffees ready. Welcome to our Wordnerds webinar, where we are talking about turning 390,000 reviews into board-ready evidence. So we've written a report and we will be talking you through the insights for that today. Hello, Kelly. Let us know where you're dialing in from today, what the weather's like, what coffee you've got, or tea. I am delighted to introduce Steve, who you may recognise from some of our other webinars. Steve is our Insight and Innovation Manager and also Chief Linguist here at Wordnerds, Chief Nerd. Super excited today. Is an exciting day. Hi, Ayla from Northumberland. Yeah, it's grey here as well in Gateshead. Steve, how are you doing?
I'm good, thank you, Helen. It's it's an exciting day, as you say. I don't like to talk about it, but I'm back on telly tonight on Only Connect, the BBC Two show.
So exciting.
This is only the second most nerve-wracking thing I have to do today. So I am. This is a good dry run for later on this evening.
Oh my word, this is so exciting. Minor celebrity status, aren't we lucky? Hi, Kelly.
Unbelievably minor, but yeah, we'll take it.
Hi, Patricia. Lovely to see you. How we're getting people from all over today. Liverpool, London. Exciting. Jane from Derby. Yeah, Jane, I'm with you on the fifth coffee. Mind you, I'm not quite as hardcore. I have got milk in mine. Are you on the tea today?
Always. Steve? Yeah. That's as hard as I can manage. So I'll stick with that.
Brill. Well, we're 2 minutes in, so I'm hoping. Thank you all for joining us this morning. We will begin. Let me introduce myself. My name is Helen. I am Head of Account Management here at Wordnerds, and as I mentioned before, minor celebrity, Steve Erdl is our Chief Scientific Officer as well. Today we will be talking about the reviews that we've analysed, but in the wider context of what we're seeing in the CX space at the moment, around sort of, more data is everybody's dealing with more data, and with that comes a lot of challenges. We'll also be talking to you about what's the most dangerous guest complaint in the context of what that can cost you as a business. During the report, we have analysed the data through different market segments, looking at budget, mid-market and luxury hotel chains. So we'll be looking at the specific challenges that might be affecting your segment and some of the quickest wins as well that you can take. All of this is underpinned by our methodology for automating the analysis of reviews. So we'll share a little bit on how we've done that as well, and the 4 techniques that we've used within the report to prioritise that insight for action. And ultimately, and possibly the most important bit, is that message on how you, as a CX or a voice of customer team, can articulate ROI to the finance bods in your organisation. So hopefully that's a useful starting point for today, and that's why you're all here. But just to kind of give you a bit of background on what we're seeing from with the people that we're talking to in the CX space, and similarly we have heard this from people in the wider when we're going out to events and sort of meeting people as well, is that whilst everybody here is don't worry, Alina, you haven't missed anything. So what we're seeing from in the general sort of CX space is lots more data coming into your teams, and you are being asked to do a lot more with that data for a lot less. The last Insight event we went to, most people had their teams reduced to maybe 2 or 3 people. These team sizes are a lot smaller than they were when we were talking to clients 3-4 years ago. And what we're seeing within that data overwhelm space is a lot of people that are still in that manual coding space, so busy working through spreadsheets, and all power to you if you're in that space. It's an incredibly hard job to try and get a sense of what to do with the insights from that space. Similarly, we're seeing a lot more pressure on teams to start adopting AI, using LLMs, Copilot, ChatGPT to try and analyze that feedback. And a lot of you actually are already using a VOC tool like Qualtrics or Medallia, which are absolutely fantastic for sort of scheduling and getting data at various points in the customer journey, but maybe not so good at giving you a level of insight that is actionable and allows you to know what might be influencing your CX metrics that you care about. And ultimately, all this data overwhelm is leading to sort of time-consuming reporting that essentially is giving you and your teams a bit of an insights gap, because you're reporting on data that is 6 weeks out of date by the time it comes around to the board and gets out into the business. Similarly, a lot of the insight is top level, and colleagues just struggle to know what to do with it, and often it comes in unprioritized. And what that ultimately leads to is a team that is unconfident. And whilst your CX leaders may well feel that their VOC strategy is going in the right direction, your teams and your colleagues underneath who are dealing with the data, who are making these recommendations, don't feel that they have the right data, or that they don't feel like they've got the confidence that what they're recommending is either being actioned or that it's actually moving the needle on the KPIs that you're being measured by. And what that ultimately leads to is, in the worst case scenario, when budgets are being cut, is that there isn't enough space in the budget for the CX spend that you need in order to kind of drive improvements. And that becomes a vicious cycle where we end up with less, hi Clara, less insight, and again, you're back into feeling overwhelmed with the amount of data that you've got in. So what we're talking about today is essentially the best CX teams are ultimately trying to break this cycle, and it starts that we have seen with the best versions of this is CX teams who are linking their feedback to ROI, to metrics, and ultimately able to prove to their business that they are not a cost center, that they are a strategic asset within their organization. And what we've seen with review data is that every interaction matters more than you think. Science Direct have done some research that shows a 1-star increase on TripAdvisor can equate to 3% growth in revenue, which is huge. It's huge by the time you extrapolate this at up to your business level on an annual revenue basis. So, in a 1.1 trillion pound market globally, if you're a mid-level chain like Accor, turning over 250 million in a year, the difference between a 3-star and a 5-star review is about 15 million pounds. And so actually what we're seeing is, if you can increase your TripAdvisor, your average star ratings on TripAdvisor or Google or anywhere else, actually we can start to see that there is a financial implication to this, and it is there in black and white. And what we want to take you through today is really how can you leverage this data to show the business the value that not only you bring to your organization, but what this means from a revenue perspective if you don't get this right. We're dealing with review data today, but because a lot of you are new to Wordnerds and maybe haven't seen us before, it's worth saying that obviously we're not just talking about review data here in the grand scheme of things. Actually, more broadly, VOC covers all sorts of different conversations, from your complaints, your surveys, your phone calls, and your staff conversations. You don't need to go out necessarily and start creating new surveys to capture the insights that you need. You don't need necessarily to be thinking about getting your customers to give you more reviews. They're already telling you where they are in their journey and what they want. And so really what we're talking about here is, although we've done it with review data, in reality, a lot of this information is already there in your business. And if I can just take 5 minutes to explain, Wordnerds is a customer feedback analytics platform. If you haven't come across us before, and we're a specialist text analytics platform, so we help you to to automate your customer feedback from lots and lots of different channels. And ultimately, we want to empower your teams to feel confident in the actions that they're recommending, so that not only do you look like a pro in front of your colleagues, but actually you're delivering real value to your business and you're able to articulate the ROI that your CX activity is taking. So hopefully that's a useful starting point from us. Today, we're obviously going to talk through the analysis of the 400,000 reviews. And as I mentioned before, we're looking at this through the perspective of luxury, mid-range and budget hotels that we've sourced from publicly available sources like TripAdvisor, Google and Booking.com. At the end of today, we're going to have we are going to have a Q&A. So do feel free to drop your questions in the chat as Steve goes through the insights that we will take you through next. Come on in, Steve.
Thank you so much, Helen.
Thank you.
That's a really helpful start. And thank you so much all for being here. As Helen said, my name's Steve. I am a recovering linguist and one of the co-founders at Wordnerds. My particular area of interest is generally around how you go about getting the most possible value out of the insights that we provide. And as Helen's already articulated, this area, a lot of value. There is a lot of potential revenue that is tied up in your star rating. And so understanding that felt like a really big and important and also really interesting, fun challenge. So we've looked at just under 400,000 reviews from a range of different hotels at different levels. So from budget all the way up to luxury. I want to give a big shout out to my colleagues Stella and Ruth, who did a lot of the work that I'm now about to take credit for. But what we're going to do is we're going to go through some of the key outputs that we uncovered in that process of understanding those reviews at different levels. Now, as Helen said, I don't like to talk about it, but I am tonight, as we're recording tonight, going to be back on a TV quiz show. And so now I kind of just basically see the world as a series of quizzes. So unfortunately for you guys, that means that we're going to present these insights in the form of a little pub quiz. So if you're feeling brave, if you could write in what your answer is in the chat, hopefully at the end of this we can crown a winner. But there's 5 kind of key areas that we're going to look at, each one looking at different aspects of the customer experience at a different hotel type. And let's see how you guys get on. So the first question, and we are starting with the big one. As Helen said, a drop in star rating can have a serious impact on your actual revenue. So which of these 3 things do you think is the biggest, it causes the biggest drop in star rating and therefore causes the biggest challenge that you might have in terms of future revenue? Do you think that the biggest drop in star rating revolves around confusion at the booking process? Do you think it's cleanliness of the rooms? If that's bad, does that drop the star rating the most? Or is it condescending staff? Patricia, straight in first on the buzzer. Between B and C, I'm going to say B. Clara says cleanliness. Ayla says C, condescending staff. Quite a lot of love for C here, quite a lot of love for condescending staff. That feels weird to say, but quite a lot of people going for that answer. So mixture here between A, B, and C. I think C just about has it. Well done to the people who said C. The biggest drop in star ratings of all the different aspects of the customer experience that we looked at was around staff that are condescending. And that's true at every single level of hotel, from budget to luxury. Excuse me. Now, as a linguist, I was kind of interested in the fact that actually the language that people use is slightly different depending on the type of hotel. So budget hotel customers were more likely to describe staff as arrogant. Mid-range, it was more discussion around kind of dismissive. And for luxury hotels, the word condescending was used more often. But Whenever you are in a situation where a staff member makes a customer feel small or talks down to a customer, you are likely to see a drop of around 2.5 stars in their review. Now, that is bigger than if the staff member is just rude. That is bigger than if the staff member is unhelpful. That is bigger than if the staff member isn't there at all. The biggest drop that we see is around when a customer feels talked down to. And so when you're pulling together training, or you're trying to help staff improve with their customer experience, that area will impact it more than anything else. So big well done to the people that said C there. Let's go on to the next question. One of the things that we do at Wordnerds is try and put some of the points of the customer experience into a journey. And you can see here we've got a kind of standard 7-point journey going from booking and pre-arrival all the way through to post-stay and retention, including kind of how you arrive and check in, what the room's like, what the staff are like, what amenities are available, bar and dining, and then post-stay and retention. Now, we've looked at how customer sentiment and customer experience fluctuates across these different areas. And for 6 out of these 7 areas, mid-range hotels and budget hotels have very similar levels of satisfaction. What we're interested here is there is one touch point where mid-range considerably outperforms budget. So 6 of these are very similar. One of them, mid-range, has a significant advantage over budget hotels. Which of these 7 areas do you think is the one that has the biggest impact, or has the biggest performance jump between budget and mid-range? Okay, we've got some interesting answers coming in here. So Kelly thinks staff, Ayla thinks bar dining room service, Anna's going for rooms, Patricia, you've gone for amenities and facilities. That's interesting. So quite a range of ideas here, more coming in for amenities now. They're all kind of vaguely plausible, aren't they? They're all kind of vaguely plausible in terms of where that big step might be. Shall we find out? So the biggest the biggest difference between mid-range and budget hotels tends to revolve around dining. You can see at the top here, the graph, you can see it on the top. What we've done is we've broken the customer experience down to these 7 areas. Sentiment is on the y-axis. So as the line goes up, that means customers are getting happier. As it's going down, they're getting more negative. You can see here that, and sorry, the size of the bubble is the number of people talking about that stage. So how many people are talking about it? How are they feeling about it? And you can see the 2 lines here. So we've got the kind of tealy green line is the budget hotels. The purpley pink line is the mid-range. And for the most part, they're kind of intertwining, aren't they? They're kind of back and forth. Some things actually, budget hotels have a higher level of satisfaction than mid-range hotels. But we've got this one considerable gap, and it's around bar dining room service. Often we see that around food quality. So, and a lot of the time, this is obviously about expectation. So where budget hotels tend to have a dip in terms of the gap between expectations and what they actually get is around the quality of the food that is provided for them. They have a higher expectation than they often get. We also see lack of choice. So particularly on breakfast time, in the more budget hotels where there are missing items at breakfast, I'm sure we've all experienced it, we see that big drop off, and that's much more likely to happen in a budget hotel compared to a mid-range hotel. But the rest is actually really similar because of that expectation. Just as for the Premier in breakfast, totally agree, Patricia. Absolutely, that's the only reason I travel. Fantastic. So very well done to, I think Ayla was the only one that got that right. So Ayla's taken a lead, I think, here. Now, thinking about budget hotels specifically, obviously, the thing about budget hotels is they have smaller resources for customer satisfaction than the mid-range or the luxury hotels. So they have to attribute those resources really carefully. But we want to increase our star ratings as much as we can. So which of these three things do you think will increase star ratings the most for budget hotels? What's the best thing that they can invest in? Should they update their decor? Make it more modern? Will that help with the star ratings? Should they bite the bullet and lower their prices? Or should they invest in creating memorable experiences? Vote now. We've got a much more. I think we're seeing a lot more agreement on this one than the previous one. So a lot of people saying 3. Patricia, Neve, Lana, Clara, you're all saying 3. Ayla, you're saying 2. Has Ayla taken another big step into the lead here? Last minute for any more guesses? Update decorations, lower prices, create memorable experiences. The actual best thing that budget hotels can do, very well done if you said creating memorable experiences. That aligns to about 1.3 star increase when a customer says, I had a really memorable experience. Again, though, this is a challenge for budget hotels, because this is true of all hotels, that the memorable experience will increase star rating. But obviously for the more luxury end hotels, I mean, for luxury hotels, the very act of going to a hotel is a memorable experience. When you're on a budget, how do you go about actually providing customers with those memorable experiences? So what we've looked at is we've looked at where customers in budget hotels have talked about, this will stay with me for a long time. I feel this will be a really happy memory for me, that sort of conversation. And we've looked at what overlaps with that. And a couple of key things came up. In about a fifth of the cases, the memorable experience revolves around first impressions. So how they were greeted as they came in, what the staff were like in check-in and that kind of thing. Those first impressions are where a lot of customers feel like they get that kind of memorable experience from our budget hotels. We're also seeing a lot of budget hotels really focusing in on customers that are traveling with children, with those kind of family groups, because it can be relatively inexpensive to create those memorable experiences. We're seeing hotels on the sort of budget side of things, providing little keepsakes for children, particularly around holidays, so Christmas and Easter and that sort of thing. And we then see a big increase in the number of people talking about this experience meant a lot to me, this was really memorable, which in turn leads to an increase in star rating, which, as we've already established, in turn leads to an increase in revenue. So Ayla's dropped back a little bit there. Let's see if she can win it back with this next question. So we talked about budget. We're going to mid-range now for our fourth question. And mid-range hotels have a big challenge. And that challenge is the expectations can often be really high for a mid-range hotel. It can be pushing up towards the luxury. But then budgets and the resources can often be lower, be sort of more towards the kind of budget end of hotels. And we definitely see that in terms of customer feedback, and nowhere is that clearer than with value for money and price. So those two graphs you can see at the bottom there, the kind of lightest of the 3 bars is the mid-range hotels. You can see that for both value for money, people saying this was good value for money, and just people talking about price, this was cheap, this was expensive. You can see that luxury hotels and budget hotels are very similar in terms of people's satisfaction with the price and with value for money. It's lower in both for mid-range hotels. So this is a real challenge for those kind of mid-level hotels that aren't the super luxury end, but aren't kind of cheap and cheerful budget hotels. So if you were running a mid-range hotel or mid-range hotel chain, which of these 3 do you think would be the best thing to attack if you were looking to improve perception around value for money specifically? Would you put on extra staff at breakfast? Would you invest in comfier beds and pillows? Or would you employ more staff to ensure that the attention to detail was really high in terms of room cleanliness? So what do we have here? We've got a few people saying 3. Patricia, Lana saying 3. Clara, you're saying 1. Kelly, you're saying 2. Neve's gone for 1. A real mixture here, a lot of disagreement. This is very exciting. I'm waiting for the trash talk to begin, by the way, between the different groups. Let's see how that goes. Yep, so Alina, you're going for 1. So it looks like 1's just edging it here, the extra staff at breakfast, but lots of people talking about 2 and 3 as well as potential things. Now they do all have a certain level of improvement, particularly around value for money. But the one that has the biggest impact on positivity around value for money and price is actually that more stuff at breakfast one. That will give you a bump of about 0.8 of a star. And I think there's a couple of reasons for that we see in the data. Firstly, I know Neve, celebrate away. You've done that. That's an excellent guess. So I think the first thing to say is more staff at this point. This is a point where customers often feel like they don't quite know where to go, or they don't kind of have that, or they need stuff kind of quickly. And so at that point, more staff is really appreciated. Also, the optics of it, when you have a breakfast room with not a lot of staff there, it can then feel like not a lot's being spent here in terms of keeping us happy. So if there was one area to zoom in on, those couple of hours of breakfast, ensuring that there's sufficient team members there can make a huge difference, particularly in terms of that perception of value for money, which is a big challenge for mid-range hotels. Great. So I think I'm trying to do this on the fly, figure out who's winning. I think we have a new leader. I think that Clara is now jumping to the top. Please do let me know if you think it's not Patricia. Oh, sorry about that, Patricia. Stick in it. Maybe you'll get this last one right. The final question that we wanted to ask you. So we've talked about budget hotels. We've talked about mid-range. We're now going up to the luxury hotels. Maybe, Patricia, that's the challenge, is that, you're just so used to staying in luxury hotels. I know how it is. Where we're looking now at specific hotels. So we talked a bit about general trends in the data. We're now going to zoom in and look at these 2 specific hotels. We're going for 2 of the really big beasts of luxury hotels in this country, the Ritz and the Savoy. Which of these 2 hotels do you think performs best specifically for menu variety? So not necessarily quality, not necessarily how tasty the food is, but the amount of choice that you get on the menu. Do you think it is the Ritz, or do you think it's the Savoy? More reticent on this one. That's interesting. Not a lot of Savoy or Ritz fans. Neva's going for A. We've got quite a lot of people going for B. Clara says Ritz. Patricia says A. Shall we find out who's got this last question right? The actual hotel that performs best in terms of menu variety is the Savoy. So very well done if you said that. The Savoy, the level of menu variety is pretty exceptional. We see we normalize our score to 0 to 100. So 96 is pretty amazing. I think there's a couple things there. Firstly, obviously, we're zooming in on a really specific thing here, and that's the sort of thing that you can do when you've got this data categorized in the way that Helen's described. You can zoom in really to a really granular level on specific things about the experience, and this is obviously a real positive for the Savoy. I think the other thing to say about this is, if you just looked at the Ritz data, you'd think we're doing pretty well in this area. Like, a sentiment score of 87 is really, really good. But when you're looking at this particular aspect of the customer experience for luxury hotels, 87 is kind of mid. It's very kind of middle of the pack in terms of their quality in this area. I think that's a really important thing to think about as well. When you're looking at your data, having that ability to scan the market as well and understand the context behind which your customers are giving you this score. This feels like it should be a real strength of the Ritz, but actually in the context of these other luxury hotels, this is an area where they can stand to really improve. So enormous well done to everyone. I think that was a really, I've totally lost track of who's won that, but maybe if you think you have got a high score there, if you put your score in the chat, we can maybe crown a winner. But give yourselves a round of applause. That was, you clearly know your stuff. But I think I think that just to really quickly, before I hand back to Helen, go through the actual kind of techniques that we've used in order to get you that kind of information. So there's 4 kind of key analysis techniques that we've used there, and a secret 5th one that I'm going to just mention at the end. So firstly, impacting on a key metric. So we've taken a key metric, which in this case was star rating, and we've looked at what aspects of the customer experience really affect that key metric. So finding your key metric, and a bit of advice that I got from one of our best customers recently, which I think, which I'm spreading to everyone, is find out what your senior leadership team get their bonus based on, and then make that your key metric. It's an excellent way to ensure that you are always the most valuable team to them. But find out what that key metric is. We've already shown about how star rating has this connection to bottom line, so that's a good one. And then find out what the impacts are, what the key aspects of the customer experience that impact that are. Secondly, user journey. So thinking about all those different points in your customer experience from the first time they contact you all the way through to after the experience, post-care. And thinking about how you can show how you're doing in each level of each area of that customer journey. You can make that as granular and specific to your own customer journey as you can. And then it's really easy to zoom in and say, this is the lever that we can pull to make the biggest impact on our customer experience. Diving into key issues. In this case, we looked at value for money, but getting specifically to the point where you hit action, where you can find something that you can go away and do to improve, and then measure that and understand how that's actually impacted in the real world. But until you get to action, your job is not done. And then finally, competitor benchmarks. Using the wider context of your industry as a control group to understand not just which areas you're doing well or not well in, but to understand what are the areas of real distinction that you have against your competitors. So those are 4 kind of key techniques that we'd recommend using if you're looking to get this kind of understanding. The final technique was actually the quiz that you all did and you all participated in so well. That's something that we've seen a couple of our best customers start to do, is when they're presenting to the senior leadership team, rather than just blandly telling them what's going on, they ask them first. They say, what are you expecting? What are you predicting this data is going to say? And that's been a really interesting, firstly, as with all quizzes, it's a lot of fun. But more importantly, it gives you, it gives your senior leadership team the opportunity to just consider their own biases, to consider where they're starting from, and to actually then get to be surprised. And at that point, you really have them. You can really sort of show that areas that might otherwise have been ignored or have been dismissed after. It's very easy to say after you've been told a piece of information, oh, well, I would have guessed that. Making them guess first is actually much more powerful in terms of getting them to the point where they are willing and ready to act on it. So thank you so much for playing. I'm really excited to answer your questions, but for the moment, I will hand back to Helen.
Thank you, Steve. Super, super helpful and great insights there as well. Guys, if at this point it's worth saying, we will make the report available. If you would like to download it, feel free to. I think that handout should now be available in the chat section of this webinar as well, but we'll also follow up on email. We're about to come to a Q&A. Pop your questions in the chat and we will get to those in about 5 minutes time. Just to kind of open the book a little bit on our methodology, and and really how we bridge the gap between what you need as an insight team and what AI is currently delivering. It's worth saying that Wordnerds is not using Copilot or ChatGPT to do the bits that to do the analysis work that we've done here. We have our own proprietary AI software, and we believe that it's doing a better job at giving you the insights that are actionable, that's turning this into something that's prioritized, and ultimately allowing you to see what might be impacting your kind of key CX metrics. So the first thing that we do is classify this data, and it can come in from any channel. As I mentioned before, we sit under your frontline tools. That classification piece is really important, and whether you're doing this manually through spreadsheets or you're doing this through other tools, the classification needs to work at a level that makes sense for your business. What we do see is that if you're trying to classify data by the promoters, the detractors, and the passives in NPS, that often this doesn't align or resonate with what your colleagues are doing day to day, and you do need that operational function to help you improve outputs. So that classification, we tend to find works really, really well when you can kind of convert the data into customer journey points or departments or areas that make sense for your business. That's the first thing. The second thing is then how we prioritize this information. Knowing that someone doesn't like the artwork in the room potentially isn't as significant as some of the other issues that you might find. And really what we want to do is not just surface all the problems in the data and all the good things, by the way. It's really important that we see both lenses, what you're doing really well and what potentially you're not doing so well at. And then the most important thing is understanding how these issues are impacting the scores that you make. So we spend a lot of time and we do a lot of work in prioritizing that data so that you as colleagues, you and your colleagues rather, are focused on the things that will make the most difference, that you're doing the highest value work to make sure that the impact that you have can be as big as possible. And then increasingly what we found is that as a lot of you are already reporting in BI tools and using Power BI or Tableau, it makes sense that your customer feedback lives there too, alongside the quant data that is already being reported there. So we're also pushing this stuff to Power BI. And really, the kind of two things that I wanted to cover is how we move from this perception of a cost center. So data and insights is just a cost center to the business, to something that is a strategic asset. And the first steps to that are understanding what your baseline is, understanding what that feedback looks like, and building a cycle of continuous improvement. This doesn't work without there being constant measures and improvements that we're putting in place. You can't just do NPS or CSAT or even look at your review data if you're not looking at this from the perspective of this is how we build this is how we continuously improve the services that we've got. The level above that, though, once we've linked the feedback to your key metrics, is then to look at how we can protect the revenue that's there, and that includes just keeping your review scores at the level that they're at now, and then building on those, but also predicting things like churn, so that you have loyal customers that stay with you for longer, that continually book with you, and increasingly looking at how we can use this VOC data to influence customer behaviour. And we do a lot around this area, looking at behavior analytics, looking at ways in which you can encourage more customers to upgrade, take those upgrades, put reorders in, use the dining and facilities that you have on offer, and ultimately build on that revenue that you've already got a baseline for. So that's us in a nutshell. If you're sat there wondering what your biggest revenue killers are, and kind of interested in what your data might show from a guest satisfaction perspective, we are offering everybody today our proof of concept program. This is designed to be low risk and relatively low cost. So we'll take a look at the last year's worth of existing feedback that you have in your business. That can be reviews, surveys, social, anything that you can get your hands on. And we will do the driver satisfaction analysis that we've just done within this report. Look at what's driving revenue for you, what might be also potentially killing your review scores, and allow you to put some quantifiable revenue numbers on the impact that this might be having. If that sounds interesting, I think my link to, in the first instance, just book a call. Thank you to the people behind the scenes. Is available if anyone would like to just have a chat about what this looks like for them. Feel free to do that. And as I say, we're about 2 minutes away from the Q&A, so pop your questions in if anyone has any. Let's see what we've got coming up. Okay. Steve, it looks like if you can come off mute. Looks like we've got a couple of questions on the data. I'm going to start there. We've got a question from Alina here that says, how can your platform break down condescending staff per function, i.e. attitudes of receptionists versus cleaning staff versus catering?
I think it's such a great question, Alina. Thank you very much for asking it. Yeah, I think so. I think that it's important to say, first of all, that we can only give you information if your customer has said it. So in the first instance, they might just, you get some people that talk really broadly just about a member of staff. Other people will talk really specifically about a specific role. Other people will mention that member of staff by name, and we see that particularly with something positive. And it's worth saying as well that we're not just here to try and find issues with staff. I think it's also really great to celebrate best practice and to spread that around the organization as well. But yeah, I mean, if it is mentioned, the kind of the particular role of that person, that's one of the things that we do look into in depth, so we can look at overlapping those kind of points in the customer journey with the job role, or indeed the individual that they interacted with. So you can get a really good sense of the particular challenges or the particular areas of strength that particular groups or team members are bringing to that challenge. And that's something that you can use for improvement. It's also something you can use to celebrate best practice.
Great, thank you. Hopefully that helps with that question. Thank you. The next question is from Clara, and she said, going back to mid-range and the key difference in the dining offer, do you have any advice for where mid-range hotel chains could improve to better compete with budget chains?
Yeah, so I think, again, thank you so much for the question, Clara. I think dining is the area where mid-range hotel chains have a significant advantage over budget chains. So they've got that, that's an area where they're doing really well. In order to really leverage that, food quality is normally an area of strength. Oftentimes it's about getting the service up to that level. What I would also say, though, is obviously this is very dependent on the specific mid-range hotel that we're looking at. There's a great deal of variation, and we saw that we find it really fascinating to see the level of variation in different strengths and weaknesses, even in what would seem on the face of it very similar hotels. So the first thing we would do is to understand what are the key things, what are the key areas for that specific hotel, and then contextualize it with the hotels that are similar to get that full understanding. Oftentimes we put that in the form of a SWOT analysis. So your strengths are, this is what you're doing that's better than your competitors. Your threats might be, these are things that your competitors are doing really well, and so on and so forth, which is a really good kind of one-off visualization to get a sense of, here are the things that we can do. But it's really tailored to that specific organization. But on a general level, it's generally for mid-range hotels, it's the service area that they can bring up to the food quality rather than the other way around.
Great, thank you. Hopefully that answers your question, Clara. And we've got one from Patricia here, which says, you mentioned linking revenue to star ratings. Do you have any examples of how you might do this? Do you want me to go first on that one,
Yeah,
Steve? Okay, yeah, great question, and obviously a key one. I think so this is definitely a sort of a newer area that we're seeing customer experience teams starting to think about more generally. I think there's an awful lot of research out there now that links revenue to star ratings and the impact that it can have, but not just your star rating, the same for NPS, the same for other CX metrics. I think it's well understood that you improve your customer experience scores and it will have an impact on your revenue. We're seeing organizations do this practically, though, in two ways. The first way is essentially getting an agreement across your exec level that to agree a sort of nominal value per point of improvement, and that tends to work quite well where you've got NPS scores and things like that, and particularly where it's maybe less easy to kind of get access to your sort of financial teams to actually correlate this data directly. And then the second way that teams are doing it is quite literally to correlate revenue with star rating and look at what's happening there with those two data points together. There's obviously a lot that goes into star ratings and NPS and other things, but generally speaking, if you're working this as a continuous improvement program as opposed to just NPS on its own, just a metric with no one really acting on it, and I think that is the difference. It's culturally, how are you using this data to turn it into action? Then what we're seeing is that these two things do correlate quite closely together. So we can definitely kind of show you this in more detail, and as I say, we're starting to look at this in a lot more detail in terms of how this might look on an individual basis. So if you've got revenue data you'd like us to have a look at, or ratings data you'd like us to look at, happy to do that. Steve, is there anything you would add?
I think you've articulated that really well, Hannah. The only thing I think I'd add is just once, I think you described the process really well up to that point of turning that information into action. I think the only thing I'd add is once you've taken that action, it's then about measuring it. So if you do make a change based on what you think will really impact your star rating, it's then about saying we made the change at that date, getting then looking at what you would expect to change and making a hypothesis about that, saying, I expect we've had this change at breakfast. I expect conversations around breakfast to improve by this much. And then when you see that that improvement, that then gives you this really wonderful data narrative to then go back and say, this is what we expected to happen. This is what did happen. This is the impact it's had on our star rating. We would then expect to see an increase in revenue based off the back of that.
Great, thank you, Steve. Next question is from Ayla, which says, I'm just setting up our CX program. What advice would you give for a business who are quite far behind in their adoption of AI and CX tools? Thoughts,
it's another great question. Thank you so much, Ayla. I mean, I think the first thing I'd say is don't sweat it. I mean, I think it's really easy to imagine that all of your competitors now have, robot butlers in their office and they're not doing any work by themselves, and it's just all being automatically done by AI. In our experience, that's not what's going on. Everyone's on a different point in this journey, ourselves included. We are changing the way that we do things all the time based on new advances in AI. I think the key things I would say if you're starting to look at this stuff is first of all, have a problem that you need to solve rather than an AI that you want to use. So within your CX program, sit down with your team, figure out what the kind of key problems, the key challenges are that you want to solve, and then think about how AI can help with that. When you're looking at tools, be very mindful of your customers' data. This is something that they've entrusted you with. I know how seriously people in travel hospitality take that, but it's definitely an area to consider when you're looking at a new tool. And then start small. Like, I think if you're interested in doing something, think about what's the smallest amount of data, the smallest number of people I need to get on board to make an impact that I can then demonstrate that will then allow me to do a bigger thing. And I think one of the mistakes we see is people trying to get every single aspect of their business in a kind of all their ducks in a row, all their infinite number of ducks in a row, so that they can then get to the point of actually starting. I think the key thing with this kind of stuff is to start. And if you do that small, you'll be able to then show results, and that will then get more people on board, and it will become this kind of flywheel.
Brilliant. Well, thank you all for your questions and your time. I think that's everything we wanted to kind of cover off today. The report is available for download, and we'll follow up on email with that as well. If you would like to chat about your CX program, obviously give us a shout, and we can take that offline. And hopefully we will see you all on our next webinar in the series. We'll be doing this monthly and sort of picking off some of the sort of big VOC CX challenges in this space. So thank you very much for your time.